What's up? Welcome in to Cincinnati Bengals Talk. I'm James Rapien. He's Andrew Fox Miller, along with Jake Liscow. It's not Locked On Bengals. It's not Locked On Bengals, and yet Jake is here. We're going to do Locked On Bengals after this live, full disclosure. But we had to start here. We had to start live. We had to start with the breaking news that we talked about yesterday. A lot of you were sweating throughout the day today. And now we have the financial terms. Yes, Jamar Chase is done. Yes, T. Higgins is done. Both 4-year deals. And T, $1.15. That's pretty darn good. For $1.15, averaging $28.75 million per year, which is really close to what I think we would have estimated even a month or two ago. Jamar Chase, the highest paid quarterback in NFL history, 4 years, $161 million under contract now through 2029 alongside Joe Burrow. The deals are done. Bengals fans celebrate, and we're celebrating with the trifecta here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. What's up, fellas? How we feeling on a Sunday night? The wait is over. Deals are done, and people can't debate it now because they're all the way done, even though they've been done for like 48 hours.
I'm just glad we're not clickbait, James.
Oh, yeah, that got to you. That got to you. Look, the past 24 hours or so, there's a lot of red tape that comes with $1 million contract, multi-million dollar. I mean, you're talking about $200 million worth plus contracts when you consider Jamar Chase's 5th-year option and the $181 million now that are left over the next 5 years, and then the $115 million that T. Higgins is signing for. There's just a lot to get through there. And yeah, this was always going to happen. It was a matter of, was it Sunday? Would it bleed into Monday? And the answer is no. It got to Sunday night, and they got completely done, even though they've been done.
We got a news dump on Sunday night. I mean, it's not Monday morning. But really, what time is it on the East Coast? It's like 11 p.m. when this comes out. A lot of people are going to wake up to this. The people that weren't waiting on the edge of their seat for this news to break. And a lot of people are going to see this in the morning. This is a bit of a news dump for national media. Like, this isn't a prime time kind of thing. You know, this is Sunday at 11 p.m. It's a bit of a news dump, sneaking it out there for anyone that wants to be critical of the T. Higgins deal, saying that he could have gotten more in the open market. But Rocky Arsenault doing a great job of marketing himself through the national reporters out there, through Ari Meirov specifically, even saying that the leverage that Rocky used, according to Meirov, which is something that we had heard about a week ago, was no Jamar deal without a T deal. Yep. And that's the way it worked out. Also, one note that I don't know if you mentioned, James, there are incentives in that T. Higgins contract that can take its average annual value up to $30 million per year.
30 makes sense.
We'll see if it gets that high, a little bit higher than we expected for both guys, just a hair, but that is partially because of Myles Garrett's contract. And I think partially because the Bengals got a 4th year on that T. Higgins deal.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you were just doing raw numbers, you would have said, all right, well, Jamar is going to get 38 to 40. Then the Myles Garrett contract dropped, and you're like, all right, well, it's just going to be slightly above Myles Garrett. For T, 28 to 30 was always kind of the range-ish. The deals are the deals, man. I'm glad they got them done. And it is huge news. And hopefully this leads to a bunch of other stuff, which we'll have plenty of time to talk about. My goal for this live, just full disclosure, for the over 1,000 people watching right now on YouTube, is to talk specifically about Jamar and T. And these were no-brainers. I mean, I thought last offseason the priority should have been T. And obviously with the agent, and it's a hurdle the Bengals have to find a way to get over moving forward. But with this former agent, it didn't feel like it was ever going to get done. And I don't think that second franchise tag would have went over the way it did with Rocky Arsenault. And so these wheels behind the scenes were clearly spinning before Joe made his comments on December 8th after that Cowboys game. And then on December 10th, it was, I believe, that Wednesday when I followed up and asked him about T. That's when we started to open up the possibility again publicly of it in about it. But I do think the Bengals, like, this took every ounce of everything to get to this level. And that means the agent change. That means the public pressure from Joe. That means Jamar doing what I think he did, which is get close, because I think that they got sort of close around the combine or shortly after the combine with Jamar. And then they pulled back and said, all right, well, let's get T done. And now you get both done. And I got to be honest, fellas, when you get off the bus and you have Joe Burrow, you have T Higgins, you have Jamar Chase, that's a hell of a place to start. And that's why I've been on team pay T, pay Jamar, keep the band together. And it's a good thing that they got it done. Andrew, talk.
I mean, I'll put it simply. We're doing a live stream obviously right now. We're celebrating, but I don't know about you guys. I was celebrating yesterday, if not sooner, right? I mean, what are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, it is funny. Jake mentioned the news dump, and it's like we didn't news dump it at Saturday at 4 p.m. Saturday at 4 p.m., y'all knew. We just didn't have the exact terms. That's literally the only thing. It was told it was done. I could read it. It is funny, though. Like, we did Locked On today, Andrew, and we were debating. And that episode's up, and it holds up really well because 2/3 of it are about Trey Hendrickson and other free agents they should go after, because we knew this was going to happen at some point. And so we discussed it. People are like, I just want it done already. It's like, it is done. I'm telling you, it's done. And it's just, you never know exactly when it's going to be like, okay, Rocky Arsenault sends the tweet to the National Reporter, and obviously Jordan Schultz has been all over this. But like, yeah, it's been done. It's been agreed to. They were working through the very small minutia that isn't really financial stuff. It's probably all the other stuff like we talked about on Locked On. But it's a great day. What's going to be even greater, they really are going to do that joint press conference. And that's going to be wild. It might be tomorrow, but I haven't gotten a schedule yet. Would not shock me if it's tomorrow. But big week in Cincinnati Bengals history for sure.
It's interesting because we have competing timelines from insiders now. It's different from Ian Rapoport and Jordan Schultz fighting in a Starbucks.
They didn't agree today. That's BS.
Yeah. So Jordan Schultz tweeting about 2 minutes ago now that they were informed tonight that Chase and Higgins were accepting their offers. The parameters were ironed out on Saturday. Meanwhile, Tom Pelissero tweeting probably 10 minutes ago that the deals were done on Friday. And
they were.
I think officially agreed upon today. Fine. Use whatever language you want to use. But the most noteworthy things about this, once you get past the players part of it, in terms of the philosophy of the Cincinnati Bengals organization, are we have the first instance of huge guarantees outside of year one for non-quarterback and Jamar Chase. We're like 116 million, I think, guaranteed on that deal, which is a huge number. And for him, when you include the fifth year, the average annual per year for him works out to be like 36.5 million a year, because you get that extra year of control. And for T, the big deal is they got guarantees in year two for T Higgins, which is a bit of a surprise to me. And they got that fourth year. A bit of a surprise on both of those counts, because if you're T, why not get back to free agency when you're 29 and take a 3-year deal instead of a 4-year deal? But instead, the Bengals, I think, get that extra year in exchange for guarantees up front. And then it will be interesting to see how that impacts other negotiations for this team in the future, now having broken their mold and given out guarantees beyond year one. Clearly to 2 stars, 2 high priority players, but a break in structure nonetheless that is at least a little bit surprising for me in T Higgins' case.
Hopefully it's a pattern. Hopefully this is the start. Hopefully this is a trend in the right direction, because they can't, I'll use like the college recruiting angle. They can't get in the living rooms of the top recruits if they're not going to guarantee money in year 2. You're not getting into it. And they've been able to work their way through it and navigate it, but it's hurt them. It hurt them with Jesse Bates, of course. And if you're willing to do it for the top guys, which you should be, not all the guys, like I do think that their logic makes a lot of sense a lot of the time. It gets you out of the Sheldon Rankins deal, for example. It gets you out of these contracts that you wouldn't necessarily want to be in. But structuring it with T, like, yeah, T's going to be on the team in 2026. It's fine to have that money guaranteed and giving him that peace of mind, especially if it does give you a 4th year. I'd much rather have T for 4 years and guarantee that 2nd year than have just a guaranteed 1 year as of now in only 3 years. I'd much rather have that extra year. Way more valuable for a player of his caliber. And so, yeah, hopefully this is the sign of something bigger for the Bengals from a structure standpoint moving forward. But we knew that, I mean, the pressure was really on the Bengals to get this done from a Joe standpoint, from a T switching his agent standpoint, like everything put pressure on them to do it, including using the franchise tag. You didn't want T playing it out on the franchise tag this year. You didn't want him to get close to that deadline and start mentally processing the fact that, hey, if I just play it out this year, then I can get to free agency. You wanted him to be focused on getting a long-term deal done now, getting paid now, and putting down real roots in Cincinnati. And I think that's the other thing that's really cool. I was thinking about the history in Bengals history. And Jamar during this contract is going to cement himself as the number one Bengals wide receiver ever. T. Higgins is probably like 11th or 12th right now, has a real shot to be a top 5 Bengals receiver ever now. With a 4-year deal, has a real shot to do that. And that's not including the playoff moments he could have and everything like that. But just from a production standpoint, can pass some really high-end guys. The TJ Hushmanzadas of the world, who knows? Maybe I'll get past like Carl Pickens and get into that top 5. But right now, I think he's like a year out of passing Boyd and passing a few of those other guys and getting into the top 10. But it's going to be cool to have these guys together. And I do think the way the roster is constructed, because there's going to be a lot, we have 1,500 people watching right now. The way the roster is constructed, there's going to be a lot of, I'll say clowns. Why not? Clowns that don't look at it and are going to say, oh, well, you can't pay your receivers and a quarterback that much. The Bengals aren't going to win. And there's going to be a lot of national talking heads that do this. There's going to be a lot of other people from other teams and fans of other teams that do this. Don't listen to them, because 95 to 98% of, I mean, unless you have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback or Josh Allen as your quarterback, you would sign up for Joe. Jamar Chase is the best receiver in the league, and T. Higgins is the top number 2 wide receiver in the league. I'm not really sure there's a debate there. Now, you could talk about the health a little bit, I guess, but when he's out there, he's as game-changing as any number 2 wide receiver in the NFL. And if you let that walk, that doesn't magically make your defense better or magically make your offensive line better. There wasn't a guard in free agency that was more valuable. The Bengals could have signed the top guard in free agency available, not more valuable than T. Higgins. You could debate that Milt Williams wouldn't be more valuable to this team, the number 1 defensive tackle to this team, than T. Higgins. And they were never going to be able to pay Milton Williams get the guaranteed money. They would never have done that. So this was their fastest path, I think, to getting back to a Super Bowl. Keeping these guys, building around them, it makes a ton of sense. There's more work to do, but Joe, Jamar, T, that's a hell of a problem to deal with. And whether you're Mike Tomlin or you're John Harbaugh or insert whoever, I guess you go Kevin Stefanski with the Browns if you want to look at them as a in the same realm there. But no, I just think this is what they had to do, and it's a good thing that they got it done.
And Joe made the agenda clear, right? And we'll see if the fourth rung, because Gesicki's back, of the agenda and Trey Hendrickson is resolved in the coming days or not. But it's hilarious to me. You're already seeing the haters come out of the woodwork. And I know people in chat have mentioned a few individuals. I'm not going to mention the individuals, but you got
me neither.
People criticizing in both directions. The Bengals were paying too much, or the deal was bad for the player, and it's going to be hilarious. People want to criticize just to criticize. My question is this, guys. Can you just roll out the 9-1-5 combination for coin flips for a full season? I don't think Zach would go for it, but they did it to finish the season last year and they won. So why not just keep rolling it out? They didn't lose when they sent those guys out there.
Andrew, go.
I mean, I'm not gonna bring a downer topic into the conversation. I'm truly taking this from an angle of like, this is going to be interesting, because you talk about how hard, kudos to the Bengals, how hard they work to get this done. Now I'm interested to see how do they execute from here on out, because it feels like, and I could be completely wrong, but it feels like there's this sort of attitude of, we've exhausted a lot of resources to get that done, whether it's the evidence or lack thereof of additions, improvements from a free agency standpoint, a wider scale than what we've seen so far. I don't know. I'd be curious to see, like, okay, you did what you needed to do. This is awesome. Let's see the momentum. Like, can we get more examples of, taking advantage of that window of the Joe Burrow era?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this can't be it, but yeah, they should be the captains for all 17 games. I'm going to tell Zach that this week. I'm sure it'll come out.
That should be a question in the presser. Do you guys want to go out for, because they haven't lost, right? They were undefeated when they were doing that, right?
They were undefeated. Yeah. They're undefeated. They did it for Dallas. It worked. And he wasn't planning it for Dallas. He was planning it for the next week, and they did it for Dallas for some reason. And then they rattled off 5 straight. It's, it is though, like you look at the roster construction, what I would do, I have literally an article dropping tomorrow about free agents that would target. And yeah, I know people are wanting the next step. I was going to make this all about Jamar and T. You guys have known since Saturday at 4 p.m. So technically, this is kind of old news that we're celebrating right now, right? So we can get to the next step a little bit. I don't know about you guys, but I would go 2 guards. That's what I would do. But I'll start with 1 guard. Brandon Scherff would be my call. I'd get Brandon Scherff in here. I don't know what's going on with Tevin Jenkins. He's set to visit Seattle tomorrow. Maybe the Bengals say, hey, don't visit Seattle, and they go that route. I don't think that's the case. I would offer Brandon Scherff a 2-year deal, not a 1-year deal, a 2-year deal, and bring stability to that right guard spot. And then I would try to bolster the pass rush with 1 more pass rusher, whether it's Calais Campbell, whether it's Zadarius Smith, whether it's Azeez Ojulari. But what they're probably doing is focusing on Trey now, and hopefully a guard. Because I get focusing on Trey, and I think that, not that their focus hasn't been on Trey, but now you have a real idea of what things are looking at now and into the future. Try to get Trey done, and then try to add a guard and add a pass rusher. That, to me, would be ideal.
100%. I don't know.
What do you got?
I mean,
I'm talking to a wall right now.
That's minimum, like, right? To be clear, right?
I mean, minimum, what do you want? You tell me what you want.
That we think they're going to do, or what you want them to do, Andrew?
What you want them to do.
Oh, yeah.
Well, sure. Yeah, I mean, if it were me, if Duke Tobin said, hey, James, you get to call the shots this week, Trey Hendrickson would be extended. I would have Brandon Scherff here. I'd probably get a deal done with Tevin Jenkins, and Calais Campbell would have been here last year. So, I mean, it would be very simple. That's what I would do. But what I would do would, is different than what they're going to do. I think that they're going to add a guard and probably work on things with Trey, and that'll probably be where their focus is.
Yeah, I think that is where they will be focusing. I would like to see them do more as well. Obviously, I agree with you there, James. But I thought we were, like you said, focusing on the 3 guys they kept today. If we want to talk more about the future, fine. We'll see what happens there. I think what'll be interesting is when we get a little bit more details, see how these deals are structured from a cap perspective, see how much cap relief they will get. I saw some people in the chat asking about some cap relief potentially that could be coming along with these moves. T. Higgins was set to have a $26 million cap hit this year. Jamar Chase north of $21 million. Those could go down. T. Higgins certainly should go down. Jamar Chase a little bit less certain, comparing it to Joe Burrow's deal, for example, where his 5th-year option, even after his extension, that cap number stayed identical. So we'll see what that looks like. But they have that foundation of T, Jamar, and Joe to build the team around on offense. That is this team's identity, right? For the future, that's the identity of the football team. And then you got to find the other pieces. And the big next question, of course, is Trey, and then what they can supplement with external free agents. That's what I'm most curious about. Is this the cork that needed to get popped to start moving things,
right?
To get the champagne flowing. And by champagne, I mean other free agent moves. Also, you can celebrate with that champagne while you're working on the other free agents, because it's a celebratory drink and it works in both senses. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I hope that this is the cork that does that. We'll cover more of the details on Locked on Bengals as well, because we're doing that after this show, and we'll go for a few more minutes here. But this is one of those moments, one of those nights, one of those weekends, really, because it, again, was yesterday. I get why, like, as a fan, you're like, oh, I don't know. I haven't seen this guy report it, or this reporter report it, or we're not going to roll with something that's like half-assed, to be clear. And you hear stuff all the time. And so I'm glad that you didn't have to take this with you into work on Monday, but it was always done. And for them to get these deals done, it does matter for Joe. And it does show Joe a whole lot of something. Like this path of, and not that they can be done, but this path of Joe losing his mind or regaining his senses, I guess. And I've called it the Carson clock a few times. I don't know about publicly, but certainly privately. And the Carson clock just getting closer and closer, in him getting disgruntled and upset with the franchise and going that route. This is such a huge step the other way, because regardless of what they add, regardless of what they do, they're committing to T, they're committing to Jamar, they're doing it long term. They're going to try, hopefully, to add more pieces here. But to do that, to keep Mike Gesicki, to still be in talks with Trey Hendrickson, like coming into the offseason, the expectation was they get, at least my expectation was, I didn't include Mike Gesicki in there, but they get Jamar, T, Trey done. Well, they've gotten Jamar done 3 months earlier than the Vikings got Justin Jefferson done last year. Just to be clear, he was done in June. All right. So this idea that they're so late on Jamar, like, I get it. They should have gotten it done last year. No top receiver had gotten a deal done before his 4th year. It was a very unique circumstance. Now they should have still. We all knew it at the time. The T. Higgins thing was weird because honestly, they didn't plan on keeping T. Higgins long term. Spoiler, they thought a year ago they would have said, yeah, he's going to play it out. And that's how it went. And then I think Joe looked around. I think the Bengals looked around at their roster. In the agent change, all of those things changed. And if you're not paying these guys, you might as well pay that. And they realized, yeah, we better pay T, because who the hell else are we paying? He's a stud and he makes us way better. And so that's kind of how things changed a bit. So it's kind of wild, but I do think I come back to the Joe point. This is huge for the Joe happiness meter, is what we will call it. And his happiness level has certainly gone up, I would say, within the past 32 hours. We could go back to Friday. I'm not. I'm going to go back to 4:00 on Saturday. The past 32 hours have been pretty good for Joe Burrow.
Have you heard of the doomsday clock? This clock that exists in the world that tracks how close the world is to. Anyway, It's like a DEFCON level. And that's what I think of when you think about the Carson clock that you mentioned. You have mentioned that publicly. You mentioned it on an episode of Locked On Bengals once.
Couldn't remember if I just talked to both of you privately about it or if I had actually said it. So
this is gonna be a trip for you right now. You're like, what conversations did I have?
That one was spoken out loud. But I think of the doomsday clock, and the doomsday clock can go backwards. It's not a clock that only goes forward in time. And now that's also true for the Carson clock. Joe, you're really stuck on me being pessimistic, and I'm going to start ignoring you in chat now and just focusing on what I'm trying to say, because I'm letting the chat get to me here.
I haven't read any chats.
Yeah,
I've read the one about what's next.
You're doing better than me. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the clock can go backwards in that doomsday clock, and the clock has gone backwards here for any clock that existed for Joe Burrow. And not only is it because they have done what they wanted him to do, but they did it emphatically and with guarantees. And I'm going to continue to underline that point. I know a lot of people out there don't care about these guarantees and the details there. And I'm going to talk about it a lot in the coming days, most likely. The guarantees are a big deal for the Bengals, that they have broken their norm of not guaranteeing money outside of year one is a big deal. We don't know what the impact is going to be for them from a cash flow perspective yet. We don't have enough details to guess at the cap hits yet for this year or for next year. But the fact that they've done the guarantees, period, shows that they have been forced to change in a significant way. Now, dragged kicking and screaming, yes. Slower than we wanted to see it, yes. But a monumental step, regardless, that they have broken that seal and guaranteed money outside of year one for a non-quarterback. And I think they deserve credit for that to some degree, even if you're the most cynical fan out there that thinks that they should have done this years ago, and you have a point, don't get me wrong. They deserve credit for getting it done here with these two players.
No doubt.
You're saying exactly what I was thinking in terms of, I think, and I can't speak for all fans, but I would imagine many fans of the Bengals would be rooting for this deal, not just because of the players and what they can do on the field and the chances they give this offense, this team, to remain competitive for years to come, but if nothing else, to continue to remind people that the Bengals, they're trying, maybe not to your point, Jake, not to everyone's liking, not to their personal standards if they were running an NFL team. I get it. But, whether it's practice bubbles, finding creative ways to, find ways to make revenue by changing stadium naming rights. And now you've got two of the highest paid wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2 in the league with guaranteed $112 million more than that. We don't know exactly with T yet, unless that's been reported since I saw the initial announcement, but that's got to be reassuring that they're trying to appeal to modern times and to, of course, Joe Burrow.
Yeah. I also think part of this is, and this includes Carson, I don't know how many times you've seen someone flex. I mean, heck, Mike, they won against the IRS. Like, if we want to go way back, they bullied the Hamilton County, whatever, in the 90s, and they won that negotiation. They don't lose negotiations. And I'm not saying they lost here, but Joe won. Joe showed his power a little bit. And Jamar showed his power some over the past 2 weeks, we know, to make sure that T gets over the top there. And that I think that's interesting too, because not that the Bengals shouldn't feel great about these deals, because they should. They're both deals that should have been made a couple years ago. At the same time, I do think they deserve credit. I just hope that maybe Joe pushing them, Jamar pushing them, everyone pushing them, they realize guaranteed money in year 2 isn't such a bad thing for the right guy. Not every guy, but the right guy. Like Jesse Bates deserves guaranteed money in year 2 always. Like, it's not a debate. It doesn't matter. You know what he's going to do on the field. You know what he's going to do off the field. You know he's going to work hard. You know he's level-headed. You know the money's not going to change him. Like, there aren't a lot of guys that check all those boxes. Joe, Jamar, T, all check those boxes. Jesse Bates checks those boxes. So all 4 of those are no-brainers. Does every guy need that? No, of course not. And so they don't have to go there with every guy. But I hope that moving forward, for example, if Amarius Mims is an all-pro for the next 2 years, well, guess what? If he's handling his business and he's balling out, Pro Bowler, all-pro, well, then guess what? He's going to be worth a lot of money and a lot of guaranteed money, and that's going to be all right. And hopefully your 17th pick this year goes that same route. And hopefully Chris Jenkins Jr. is just awesome this year and next year and the year after. And you feel that all these guys that you drafted are going that route. So, yeah, hopefully it's a big step in the right direction there. But, man, there's over 2,000 watching us right now. We're going to go to Locked On Bengals in just a few minutes here, but in just a second. Huge night for the Cincinnati Bengals to have Joe, Jamar, and T. Like, they're the faces of the franchise now, and they're going to be around for essentially a whole decade, which is really cool, because you don't necessarily see that a lot, especially in this day and age. I wish Jesse was here as part of it, but for them to keep T and Jamar long-term with Joe is huge.
Big deal. Big night.
Big deal. And we'll wrap up here. Do we have to, we have a chat. We have a question, don't we? Is that a question or no?
I mean, there's a lot of questions. Where do you want me
the
to
super chat?
But I know. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a couple here. We sort of addressed this, but just some commentary as I'm flashing this up.
Can we keep Trey and get the O-line? Yeah, I mean, they can. I think they're working on Trey and they're working on O-line help. We'll cover that in the future. Hopefully they can get that done.
And I think we spent a very decent amount of time talking about, does this mean the Bengals have changed their stripes when it comes to contracts?
We'll see.
I'm going to pose this. We don't have to necessarily answer it, but maybe like put this out there, because my mind's spinning with the fact that this happened where you talk about T leaving his agent, working with Jamar's agent, the level of, we'll call it coordination, but understanding of the organization that you're working for to a degree. You have to have some expectation there to go, hey, I may have to shuffle things around so we all can get what we want. I don't know. Is there a precedent out there that we could compare this to? I haven't really thought about it that way.
I think the thing that makes this the most unique is like you're pointing out, Andrew, T. Higgins showing the understanding that this is what I have to do to stay in Cincinnati and actually get a deal that is commensurate with something that approximates his market value. I think it's still short of what he would have gotten on the open market, but
it is.
He played his hand to stay in Cincinnati and get what he wanted in that sense, the best I think he could have here. Now, does the deal get done if he stays with David Mulugheta? Maybe not. And there's this talk about him improving his leverage by switching to Rocky Arsenault as his agent, which to me seems like a pretty crazy idea when you take it at face value, right? Because David Mulugheta was going to get T the most he could have possibly gotten, or they would have been in another ugly situation with the franchise tag. Probably not, right? If Mulugheta still represented T, probably wouldn't have gone that way. They maybe would have explored the tag and trade or whatever it would have been. But by switching his agent, he got exactly what he wanted and hitched his wagon directly to Ja'Marr Chase in a pretty unique way. To your point, Andrew, like seeing that publicly come out that Arsenault essentially and Chase said no deal without T. That's some pretty unique stuff and really underlines what these guys wanted, like what the players wanted. All the time we hear about players wanting to stay with the teams that they're at. And we've heard of with Trey Hendrickson too, right? But needing to get certain financial numbers to match that desire to stay in that city. T. Higgins really taking matters into his own hands here, along with, sounds like, Joe Burrow, Ja'Marr Chase behind the scenes kind of orchestrating this a little bit. Sounded like that's the way this started all those months ago, and really making sure that he did whatever he could to stay in Cincinnati. And that, I think, is very uncommon to see players take this level of action to stay with the team, to show that kind of loyalty. And I know he got paid, don't get me wrong, but that is uncommon from a player perspective.
Yeah, I agree. That's unprecedented for sure. I mean, all the steps he took, like I know Jesse deep down didn't want to go.
Right.
But they got to the point, he wasn't getting double tagged. The offer just wasn't nearly as good. Like, it's one of those things. And T's like, no. I remember a couple of years ago, he said, he works for me, not the other way. He said that to someone when he's talking about his agent. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think it was probably after the Jesse stuff or during the Jesse stuff, because we knew that he had the same agent. And obviously it played out that way, where he's like, all right, how do I get what I'm worth and also stay where I'm happy? And I think if he's truly happy here, I don't know why you wouldn't be with Joe and Ja'Marr, of course, but if he's truly happy here, it's a very wise, beyond his years, he's 26, beyond his years type of decision, because it would be really easy to let your ego and all of the things that go along with being a number one wide receiver in the NFL and being a 32, 33, 34, maybe $35 million per year player versus $29, $30 million player, which will be here in Cincinnati. So yeah, he deserves a lot of credit for that as well. Any more? I just want to make sure we answer all the super chats before we go, Andrew.
I just want to point out everything you guys are saying. You think about the ugly contract deals and falling outs and everything that we think about. It's just been cycling, sort of the doom scrolling part of it. Like, as we're waiting on some signings, some contract extensions, like you've seen the stuff people are flashing up from the Andre Smiths and whoever else, right? Everything you're just saying right there, like this may be the biggest greeting T. Higgins will ever experience ever when he runs into the tunnel at Paycor Stadium. Like, I can hear fireworks when Reds win ball games from my house. I expect to hear T from my house next season.
We'll see if the fans can get loud enough. I think they can. I think some fans can achieve that goal.
By the way, there's over 2,000 of you. Don't go to bed. We're about to wrap up here. Jake doesn't know this. I'm in the process of putting together Locked On Bengals live.
Oh,
we're going to go live for this show, special live show. And we will do that as well. So don't go to bed yet. You got 2,000. You subscribe here, you ring the bell here, and then you join us over on Locked On Bengals. This is called dual promoting. It's what we do here, Jake. How about that?
Fantastic work. I also wore my Locked On Bengals shirt. Had to represent.
Look at that.
I had to represent. Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody, in 2 minutes. I guess we didn't quite make it, but close enough.
We didn't quite make it. We're getting Andrew to bed right before midnight. Thank you so much for watching. Enjoy, celebrate. Ja'Marr T here to stay, and we will have plenty all week long here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. So for Jake Liscow and Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you over there on Locked On Bengals here in a few minutes, right here on YouTube.